What's going on YouTube? JT Born here, and welcome back to another edition of my Godzilla comic book reviews. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the Godzilla 70th Anniversary IDW one-shot special. So this comic book actually came out 2 weeks ago. They also released another one as of today during the recording of this. It's based around Mechagodzilla, so I figured I'd go ahead and just do a 1-2 punch and talk about both of them. So first, we're going to talk about this one. It's been in my Kindle for a little bit, just, you know, kind of there, like, ready to read, but because it's like 90-something pages, I would just casually kind of read a story like a day or something like that, or just kind of like read some of these other stuff that got kind of pushed to the side. But now I'm here to kind of talk about this. And yeah, so this is Godzilla 70th Anniversary. There's 9 different specials or comic book one-shots with 9 different stories, if you will. This is an anthology storyline. Various artists come in, tell their own Godzilla stories, and, you know, some are better than others, but at the end of the day, you're getting a lot of Godzilla stuff in one issue. So there at least is a nice variety to it all. So the first one we have is the Half-Century Boar. Let's go ahead and look at the credits right here. Written and drawn by James Stokoe. Contagion, written by former DC Comics head Dan DiDio, which is kind of interesting to see that he's still actually working on comic books, because he used to be the head of DC, and then he got let go, and then Jim Lee kind of took over, and I'm kind of surprised he's still doing stuff. But yeah, what an interesting guy, Dan DiDio. So I wonder what he thinks of the current DC era, because Dan DiDio was not very popular amongst fans, but now I'm wondering if, you know, like, compared to where he was at now versus where DC is at now, like, do people like it, dislike it more? I don't know. Dan DiDio, there's some things I think that worked well, and then there's other things that definitely did not. But anyways, this is Godzilla. Enough DC stuff right now. That was Justice League vs. Godzilla vs. Kong last week. Then we have O Gods and Con Artists, and then we have written by Danny Lore. Then we have In the Shadow of a God, written and drawn by Matt Frank, very notable Godzilla artist and writer. In the Darkness, written and drawn by E.G. Sue. The Big One, written and drawn by Adam Gorman. Ain't No Place for an Angel, written by Casey Gilly, drawn by Liana Kangas, colored by Brittany Peer. And then we have In Summation, written by Michael W. Conrad, art by Gigi Schall. Aftermath, written and drawn by Natasha Tracy, and then we have all these other creatives. So if I miss my color by there, okay, the point is there's a lot of different artists and writers, so let's go ahead and quickly talk about each one. So the first one is the Half-Century Boar. I really like the artwork in this one. These are basically a bunch of people who their job is to kind of clean up the messes like a Godzilla instance. So basically the aftermath of a kaiju battle in this case was Hedorah, and their entire thing is like Godzilla in that fight, and then they have to clean stuff up, and they're like, oh wow, we're finally out of this situation. The Hedorah comes back, and they're back to kind of cleaning up this sort of mess, and all this other danger kind of happens. So it's kind of comedic, and it has some great looking artwork. Then the next one we have Contagion. This is the one written by Dan DiDio, and this is the storyline of Godzilla versus like this killer like mosquito of sorts, which is going to like release some sort of virus or plague on the world. This one's drawn by Joëlle Jones. So the artwork here is pretty good as well. And we have this person who worked in this laboratory where this virus was sort of like crafted, and the mosquito is basically like a carrier for it all. And the dangers at play with this whole thing, like not only you have to deal with Godzilla, we have this kind of post-apocalyptic threat, and even Godzilla's kind of struggling against this whole thing. But eventually it's kind of revealed to be a bit of a dream sequence, but kind of a warning like, you know, I'm going to destroy this virus thing, which, you know, this lab manufactured before it gets worse. So that's the Godzilla tie-in. Then up next we have Of Gods and Con Artists. This is the Danny Lore one, and art by Sebastian Pures. And this is about a guy who kind of sells like almost kind of like the kaiju like sellers, like almost like the Hannibal Chow type characters from like Pacific Rim, where they're selling, they kind of like extort money out of like the kaiju and try to sell their parts and all that for stuff. Hey, could I interest you in some kaiju bone powder? That's kind of where this guy comes in. He's kind of conning out of some real stuff, and then some real monster stuff kind of happens, and that's kind of where the issue ends. I mean, you have Godzilla fighting Biollante at one point, which is pretty cool. Then we have the Matt Frank storyline, which this is a very different looking art style from like some of the stuff I'm used to seeing Matt Frank do. I mean, I know it's, you know, Matt doing the work, but like the art style here is actually pretty good, but it feels, it definitely looks a little bit different than some of the other stuff that you see. Like you look at the Space Godzilla storyline that Matt did in the Godzilla Rivals, like I mean, you can still see it's the same art, but it looks a little bit different. But this is about a girl who's there in the Godzilla attack. She sees some sort of creature in the ground, and she tries to help it, and then eventually she's able to kind of escape, releases it back in the ocean, and then kind of goes back to finding Godzilla. So it's a nice little short story about that. And then the next one is Godzilla in the Darkness by E.J. Sue, and this is kind of reminds me a bit of Godzilla's Revenge, where you have Ichiro kind of daydreaming about his life and becoming friends with Godzilla and all that. But this kid basically just daydreams. He has a nightmare about Godzilla, and it's just a Jet Jaguar comes in to kind of save him, and it's just all revealed to be about toys. Then we have the big one, written and drawn by Adam Gorham, and this is Godzilla versus a giant snail alien type creature. It's almost like you combine the Blob and the snail creature, and all sorts of chaos kind of ensues, and it's, there's some violence and all that, and it ends kind of interesting, I suppose. But yeah, then we have the one that's like set in the Old West called Ain't No Place for an Angel, and this is where you have Mothra, you have Baragon show up, and even Godzilla at one point. I did kind of like the moment of the townsfolk kind of building almost a brace of sorts for Mothra and her damaged wings, but as a storyline, Godzilla feels kind of like out of nowhere in the middle of it, and I don't think it's like the best in terms of like that, but like I like the moment of the townspeople like making almost a cast for Mothra. I thought that was kind of a neat idea. Then we have, in summation, this is Michael W. Conrad. This is a storyline about a boy who was born during Godzilla's first attack in 1954, and he's kind of grown up, but his father kind of died, and he's kind of been obsessed with learning about Godzilla, given all the stuff that's going on there. You have the stuff with Mechagodzilla and all that, and ultimately comes to the conclusion that while spending years of his life trying to understand Godzilla, at the end of the day, it's like Godzilla's kind of beyond our comprehension. So that stuff actually was pretty cool. I like the artwork in this one. And then lastly, we have Aftermath, written and drawn by Natasha Alterisi. This one's in the aftermath of Godzilla's attack and his radiation that's kind of left over. And you do feel the impact. There's some nice visual storytelling bits there where, there's people trying to find means to kind of survive in a post-Godzilla attack and dealing with the fallout of the radiation. Now, it ends kind of interesting, where Godzilla's kind of in the background. You have these people just kind of storming this facility because, like, these people are like, oh, well, people are dying. Now we can kind of, and they need our, like, iodine or whatever. Now we can kind of exploit them for more profits. Again, you can kind of understand the commentary there about, like, how a lot of corporations like to exploit people for, like, they're price gouging just to kind of make record profits and such, when they could be a little bit more beneficial to those in need. So yeah, that's that. But yeah, and then there's a kind of little like kaiju communique or whatever post on the back, and then it's kind of some ads for some other Godzilla comic books that are coming up this month. Godzilla Skate or Die sounds like it could be kind of fun. And then of course we're getting a follow-up to Godzilla, Here There Be Dragons #2. So a lot of Godzilla comics, and of course Godzilla vs. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 2, which I have been reading. But whenever you talk Power Rangers, like, YouTube just flags the video instantly. So I'm like, maybe like when it's all done, I'll talk about both series back to back. But yeah, this is a fun comic book. Like I said, I kind of went through it really quick, because when you have 9 storylines, you really kind of have to sit and kind of read them all. And you get a lot of like bang for your buck, and I thought it was a pretty good read. There's some I liked more than others. I'm not sure what my personal favorite been. I think Half Century Boar. Lower power mode right there. Half Century Boar, and I think Summation about the guy who was there, and then the Matt Frank one. I mean, it's a pretty good issue overall. I think there's a lot of fun. There's a lot of like serious stuff. You kind of get a variety of tone, if you will, leaning more towards the serious stuff. Some stories are more impactful than others, but at least you're kind of getting a variety with this issue. So if you're a Godzilla fan, I do think it is well worth checking out. There's some good stuff in here for sure. Some stuff a little stronger than others, but I think overall it is pretty solid. So yeah, finally, 2 weeks later, get my thoughts out about this 70th anniversary issue. Next up will be the 50th anniversary Mechagodzilla one. I haven't gotten around to reading that one yet, but it is yet again another one-shot focusing on my favorite Godzilla opponent, Mechagodzilla, and I'm excited to check that one out. So, but in the meantime, if you haven't checked this one out, I know I just kind of ran through the whole thing, but I think it's well worth checking out. So, yep, that's all I have to say about this one. As always, take care now. Bye-bye then. I'll see you all in the next video. Please like and subscribe. More Godzilla videos on the way.